This is the Tachyon Pulse, and today we're going to be talking about a new Judge Dredd movie. It doesn't look like Karl Urban will be involved though, which will make fans very unhappy. Let's get into it.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.
So a couple of months ago I exclusively dropped that actually this was being talked about over at the studios, and that Karl Urban was actually having conversations. Now since then it looks like they've signed a director and a writer. It's going to be written by Drew Pearce and directed by Taika Waititi. I say it like that because this is a director I, after Love and Thunder, have very little confidence in. But the talk seemed to be about bringing Dredd back to the original comic book version, which would be far more satirical, and I just dread which Taika Waititi we get in this, because Ragnarok, genius. Love and Thunder, too much Taika. So I am worried. But does this mean Karl Urban won't be in it? Not necessarily. As I say, the conversation early on in this was with Karl Urban. That was the plan, to do basically a Dredd continuation. I told you at the time, there was even conversations about a series that would have followed potentially a movie, but as I say, this was very early on in the conversation and a director wasn't signed on. It looks like Taika wants to do a full reboot, so that tends to suggest that there will be a new Judge Dredd, but it hasn't been announced yet. So I'm crossing my fingers that the early conversations with Karl Urban were obviously moving into this, and that Taika Waititi wants him to do it. The problem is that when you get a director, particularly a director of Taika Waititi's fame, let's say, what he wants is really what the studio will go with. So even if the conversations early on were with Karl Urban, and the conversations were about maybe doing a Dredd continuation, Dredd 2, whatever, once the director is signed on, if he wants something different, that is what's going to happen. Could Karl Urban do more of a satirical version of Dredd? Would he still work in the role? I would say yes. I don't think his age profile is a problem. If you've seen the trailer for Mortal Kombat 2, where he plays Johnny Cage, I think you can see that he's still physically very capable of this. It would appease the fans immensely. And, you know, he is a very well-respected actor. Taika Waititi, I think, will struggle to find another actor with the weight of Karl Urban, the skill of Karl Urban, and actually an actor that looks like Dredd, the Dredd that we all imagine. Sylvester Stallone never did, and that was part of the problem. Even though Sylvester Stallone was very popular at the time, he just didn't fit Dredd. The movie didn't work for lots and lots of reasons, but for me, one of the biggest ones, that Dredd was miscast. And to be honest, there was a million other reasons, but that was a big one. For me, if Taika Waititi doesn't go with Karl Urban, I would be really, really disappointed. And as I say, it's not been announced. People are just assuming that because they're talking about a total reboot and creating this Dredd universe, doesn't necessarily mean that Urban is out. It just means that they're approaching it from a different direction. As I say, the early rumours were that this was Karl Urban, and that actually he was pushing for a lot of what they're now talking about, a Dredd universe that would spin off into series, etc., just like we said a couple of months ago. So, as a film goes through development, things change. We can only tell you what is happening now, and that doesn't necessarily mean that's what will happen down the road. But the conversations had started, we heard those rumours. So, yeah, at least we got that right. But guys, get into the comments and tell me what you think. Taika Waititi, 1. Is he the director to do this? I'm very nervous. But what do you think? Get into the comments. I think if Taika Waititi, basically whatever Drew Pearce does with the script, I think is going to be a massive part of this. But if Taika Waititi throws up all over this movie with comedy like he did in Love and Thunder, it's going to be awful. But if somebody reins him in like he did in Ragnarok, it could be brilliant. It needs to be dark, gritty, violent. Taika Waititi can do violence, to be fair, looking at his early movies. But I'm okay with a little bit of satire in there and a little bit of comedy if it's toned right. And more importantly, Karl Urban. Does he have to be Dredd? For me, it's a no-brainer to do that. But what do you think? And if it's not Karl Urban, what actor do you think could take on the role? I'm not sure. But get into the comments with your thoughts. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss any breaking news like this. Also, you can become a member of the channel and get to see a lot of our videos before everybody else. Go check that out as well. As always, please stay safe, and I'll see you next time.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.